Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and flanking me to my side here with the in-your-face number 69 Kevin Dotson jersey is a one Mr. Brian E. Roach. Brian, I mean, that thing looks larger than life. It almost looks like one of these Zoom backgrounds or something. Like it's superimposed on your screen here, man.
But it's not. It's real.
I know it's real. I don't know. It's just you have a headless mannequin there. And speaking of, for most of the folks who could see Brian here watching on our video version of the podcast, Mohawk in action. And I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what's going on with you. What is going on? Please let us know. How you been, man?
It's hot. It's not just it's hot here. And so I'm having to rearrange my office a bit so I can get my air conditioner to actually cool down the room, because right now it's sitting behind a 65-inch TV and it doesn't do jack.
I was going to say, why is it hot? I think it's only like 60s here, just pouring down.
Oh, no, man. It's like 90-something today. It's crazy hot.
It has not been that warm here yet. The pool's opened. Everything's open. It's splash pads. I saw some like idiots out there yesterday. I have to call them idiots because I went by. There's like a community pool. It's like the next town over, and they have a splash pad. They have a full pool that like I think they charge to come in, resident or otherwise. It's operated by the park system there. But there were people in it, and it was like 63 degrees, and like it's been like sprinkly, drizzly, like just the Ohio weather where you don't see the sun. We're in that phase now. I know there's some fans. Western Pennsylvania gets a lot of this same weather too, where you don't see the sky for months at a time. You get to use the pool maybe like 6 weeks out of the year. It's almost Canada. Canada. So it's not quite Florida.
I'll get to enjoy it this weekend when I get out.
I hope so. It's not quite. I was going to say the people you disparaged in Florida on a previous episode, they don't use the pool like 6 weeks out of the year. They get to use it the remaining time, so it's the exact opposite. So they have an advantage there.
And are willing to. Remember, once you've been acclimated to Florida, if it's 75 degrees, you're wearing a sweater and it's too cold to go in the pool.
You know, I would say that's the real deal too. I have not only friends, but the one cousin I like to make fun of on here. There's one that tends to be more of a yinzer, and there's one that just kind of like, I don't know. He's kind of like Patrick Starfish to my SpongeBob, if you get my drift. Sometimes he's like, he's not all up there. He's not playing with the full deck sometimes, and he doesn't listen anyway, so it don't matter. And if he does, he'll be like, were you talking about me? It's like, yes, Michael. Let him know right up front.
I was.
Yeah. Somebody had just said that. They were like, why is this guy wearing a winter coat in your photo? Like 85 degrees or something down there. He's in like Tampa area, and it's just like they call us the snowbirds when we come down there. So not to get into a whole Florida rant, we got plenty of other things to discuss and talk about and things of that nature. I guess we should start this off with wishing the best for the just announced retirement of a Tunch Ilkin. Yep. Friend of ours, spoken many times, been on the show. People have nothing but high praise for Tunch, and it's even gotten me to. I grew up, you know, when I grew up and I was old enough to actually pay attention to football. He's one of the guys, and he probably stood out because his name. And he was also a Pro Bowl guy here or there, too. He's one of the better Steelers in the 80s that post Super Bowl dynasty there. And it's hard for me to not just call him Tunch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm sure he gets that a lot. The telemarketers have probably not been kind of his Turkish descent there. But had him on the show before. Great guy, very giving. And no one has anything but high praise and great things to say about him. So we wish him the best here as well.
Absolutely.
As he has his battle with ALS. What did he say? Like 34 years with the Steelers or something like that. It's been a long time. Went from player to broadcaster.
Announcer. Yep. Absolutely. I was lucky enough to be able to do do an interview with him on the show. And just the most gracious guy you could ever talk to. So yeah, absolutely echo those thoughts and wish him the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of a somber start after talking about good or bad weather and getting people's hopes up to jump in the swimming pool and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, you could be a complete random stranger and he spoke to you just like the respect there was just like you were just any other guy. Like you could have grabbed a beer or something, sat down like at a bar like Cheers or something, almost like you've known him forever. I'll never forget. There was the one. What they call it, the draft blitz, which we haven't had now for a couple of years because of the current world we're in. But the Steelers opened up the stadium day 3. You could go there toward a stadium. Different guys were signing autographs, and Tunch is just there. They had an area in the one club level where you could just go. You could grab a seat or stand around, and fan would come up and they would broadcast live right there. They had all the TV cameras and that sitting in the back, and you could announce a pick. And I'll never forget him. He asked. We were all sitting there, and I had one of the seats right up front, and we're going back and forth with him. I remember asking him if he knew. He was saying something about Merrill Hodge, who another great Steeler from that era that we've been lucky to have a few. What do you want to say, interminglings with, if that's a word. But anyways, I had asked him if he knew which round Merrill was taken in. And that's back when they had like 10 rounds in the draft. And Tunch himself, let me see, was a 6th round pick, which back in 1980, that wasn't too far gone in the draft. You know what I mean?
No, not when there was 747 rounds.
And there were only, at that time, I think there were still 28 teams. The Tampa and why am I drawing a blank? Was it Seattle? Would have been expansion teams around in the late 70s or something like that. Because we didn't have Carolina and Jacksonville and the reincarnation of the Browns and the Texans and that yet. So they've added more teams and trimmed off more rounds. And we do have some rules and stuff that we'll eventually be talking about. Right now, the chatter is they may keep the 16 player practice squad and the relaxed injured reserve where it's a shorter window and unlimited amount of players. I think that's really good for football, to be completely honest.
So do I.
I think it's great. I think it's good for development of players as well, and we'll see, because now we're hearing about the USFL coming back, and I know The Rock Dwayne Johnson bought the XFL, and I mean there's talent to go around, but there isn't enough talent to go around, and that's kind of where we're headed today with today's show, talking about quarterbacks, because it just seems like two guys cannot get out of the media's mouth recently, and these guys, I'll get the quick short plug in here, of course, for the Chase Claypool youth football camp, because one of these guys is going to be throwing the ball to Chase Claypool, who we're expecting maybe he progresses to be the wide receiver 1 in the Steelers offense. But
be nice.
This is a young man, played his college ball at Notre Dame, plays with the Steelers now. He's definitely cultured. He's from Canada. We call him Mapletron as a joke here or there. But if you can make it out on July 21st of this year out in the Pittsburgh area, there is a youth football camp. This is apparently going to be not the inaugural, but it is the inaugural, but an annual camp for Chase Claypool for boys and girls, grades 1 to 8. It's from 9 to 2. You can check it out at chaseclaypoolcamp.com. And, of course, if you use the promo code Steel City, you'll also get a 10% discount on that. Each attendee receives an exclusive experience, but there is a limited capacity. So you'll get a souvenir autograph from Chase Claypool. So the items provided. Brian, you can't bring your jerseys and helmets and
can I go?
Shirt.
Can I go? Can I be in the camp?
Well, I know you may have not made it past the 6th grade, at least mentally.
I'm 6th grader at heart.
Yeah, I was gonna say a kid at heart, grown child over here. Do you know?
Wait, I got to say something. I haven't had one of these things in a while. This stuff is nasty.
Coca-Cola, just a regular Coca-Cola.
Just soda, period. Just soda. We don't have I didn't have anything cold to drink, and I needed something cold to drink because I might have mentioned this earlier. It's hot, and so the only thing we had was some sodas in the fridge. or as you say there in
Pop.
Dayton, pop.
Yes.
Which is my, that's my heritage. It's a pop, but out here it's a soda.
That's Ohio,
anyway,
period. It's pop.
Yeah.
Anywhere in Ohio.
Yeah.
So I've been on both sides of the state now, and it's pop.
Pop. But this stuff is gross. Ugh. Ugh. It's cold at least, but God, ugh.
Well, let me come back to that real quick. Wrapping up, ChaseClaypoolCamp.com or procamps.com/Chase Claypool. Steel City is the promo code for 10% off. It's a 10-to-1 maximum camper to coach ratio. And the camp is staffed also by some of the area's top high school and college coaches. So it's not simply just an athlete appearance. It's a comprehensive camp experience. It's great for athletes of all skill levels. I'm actually contemplating even having my 7-year-old daughter participate. And I kind of want to see what it's like, but I can't just show up there like you're trying to. So,
come on, I just be like, look, I was held back. I'm a sixth grader. I want to learn football.
I never learned to read.
He said, my mama said.
Oh, geez, you're going with the Bobby Boucher angle on that.
Mama says alligators just mean.
No, Colonel Sanders, it's your medulla oblongata.
Yeah, all right, sorry.
No, the Coca-Cola. Getting completely off track. And I was listening to, ironically earlier, Billy Joel. We Didn't Start the Fire, and he mentions the Cola Wars in there. And I got into a hole. You want to get into a black hole or a rabbit hole one night, and you're trying to sleep, and you're maybe up and you're reading. You got your phone, an iPad in front of you, or whatever. Just start reading about New Coke, especially if you didn't grow up in that era. It'll blow your mind. And it's just like they kept Diet Coke has that formula and the diet flavor. But I was drinking just the other day, believe it or not, I pulled out, I had a Coke Zero, or Coke Zero Sugar now, because technically they can't say zero, even though they marketed it originally that way, because it's not technically 0 calories. It's like a fraction of 1. It's like pi, the number pi. There's all the digits after the 3. And so they gotta call it zero sugar, which is pretty dumb. But I had one the other day. I didn't necessarily think it was gross or anything. I was just kind of like, hey, this is a little different. And not too long ago, the Mexican Coca-Colas, they have like the real sugar instead of the corn syrup.
And cocaine.
Yeah, cocaine, of course. And honeymoon in Jamaica 10 years ago. Coca-Cola there is nasty, though, man. And I've been to the Coke headquarters in Atlanta. They put the real sugar in, and that stuff will it's going to have you run through a wall. It's just so thick. It's just, they had all the different cultural Cokes of the world, and they're all made differently. But the Mexican one in the glass bottle is probably more authentic to, probably I wouldn't want to even say your generation, maybe even before.
It's before.
Yeah.
It's before.
Yeah. I've grown up with the corn syrup, and I was in the.
We didn't have the cocaine. We didn't have the cocaine.
The cocaine.
The cocaine. Yeah, we didn't have the spiked up stuff. No, we didn't have.
But we don't drink the pop or the soda or whatever you want to call it a lot. Try and keep some type of figure or stay in shape, right? So like having the sugar kind of, it's a shock to your system. Some people think that Ben Roethlisberger, all he does, this is the segue finally, since you got me off track showing your Coca-Cola bottle there. They think he's, why do people still think this guy's fat, out of shape, and doesn't take care of his body? And Brian, maybe I missed it. I understand they said something about a shot to his knees last year, and that was back like November, early December. Why does everybody think the guy has like all these knee problems or something now? Apparently they said something about like some arthritis or something, but I don't know to what level or what degree. You have guys asking, hey, what made you think you wanted to come back? Everybody's trying to put the guy 6 feet in the ground, and then they're always talking about the next guy. So we actually have a point for bringing all this up, except for the Coca-Cola stuff. That's kind of fun. But everything else is USFL, XFL, mentioning all that stuff. This show, we do this practically every summer. Quarterbacks in the NFL. And it'd probably be a whole other show. Maybe I will go through it here if I could find a decent list and start bringing them up. Some of them maybe from recall or memory. But everybody's always so worried about not only the starting quarterback, they're worried about every backup. Listen, backups are backups. They're called backups for a reason. They back up. They're not the starter. So you cannot have an all-star team of backups. If you had this isn't like you have 2 varsity programs at a large school. This is varsity and JV. In the NFL. In the NFL, the way the salary cap is structured, the way careers are pretty much 3 or 4 years long, things of that nature, the draft, the cycle every year, you don't have an opportunity to build a super team and stockpile an arsenal of weapons. That's why I say when I talk smack about teams like the Cleveland Browns, and I say their window is this year, it really is. I mean, you look at the Ravens even rebuild and then turnover and things like that. You see what the Bengals are trying to do. You see where the Steelers are, and everybody's worried about that they need to get their Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and then have him sit for a couple years behind it or get somebody else to starter and he could sit. I actually saw somebody say that they should sign Tim Tebow. I saw that this morning, Brian. Go sign Tim Tebow because he's not under contract to another team already. Got to use him on 3rd and 4th and short because that won't be a tip of the cap. Let's go back to the Randy Fichtner play calling, only 10 times worse and more obvious and predictable. So I guess we kick off this show with our thoughts of Ben Roethlisberger returning and whether or not, because he was just in the Zoom call, he got asked a bunch of dumb questions, of course. The media is still talking about him, watching Pro Football Talk with Mike Florio and Chris Sims. And, Chris Sims tends to side with Ben still got it. Yeah. Florio thinks the guy's done and the Steelers are going to be one of the worst teams. Our previous show, Adam Shine thought that the Bengals might win more games. What is the deal, man? Why is everybody – is it just because he's old? I get that Brady wins, but nobody was giving Drew Brees this much grief, were they? Not that I recall.
No, you know what it is? It's the taste in your mouth. That's what it is, right? So, unfortunately, the taste that's in everybody's mouth with regards to Ben Roethlisberger happens to be that playoff loss, 4 interceptions, right? That's the taste in their mouth. So everybody forgets the first half of the season, the first 11 games and what he was doing then. Everybody forgets everything else. They forget that he was able to hit deep passes when he was able to get time to throw them. They forget, instead it's he never threw deep passes. Well, it's because he never had time to throw deep passes. But it's beside the point, right? All they really remember is the bad, nasty Coke taste in their mouth from that last game. And so as a result, that's what they're basing everything off of. People with at least some level of responsibility in their analysis. And I'm not a huge Chris Sims fan, but I'll give him credit for looking past that I have a bad aftertaste kind of moment. Mike Florio can jump off a ledge. But
that was such an uncalled for comment, wasn't it? Or that was Pro Football ridiculous. Focus that did it. Yeah. It said Ben throwing the deep ball, and it was
they're a bunch. Well, you know what I think about the wizardly world of PFF and their bizarro, ridiculous analytics that a bunch of guys who, were in the mathletes all figured out.
Mathletes. I get some of that. I was trying to look up. It's pretty misleading that Ben, I know he didn't connect on a lot of them, but it's pretty misleading to say he didn't throw any deep passes last year. I think a lot of folks, he threw a lot of passes, 3rd most in the NFL. He didn't throw that many interceptions. 10, 11? I got to pull it up again just to verify. He was only sacked 13 times with what everyone felt was a terrible offensive line, 32nd bottom basement running game because they abandoned the hell out of it too. I think there's a lot of things at stake here. I've mentioned this a few times, but I'm going to bring it up again. The first 6 games of the Steelers season, running the ball, 30 for 141, 22 for 109, 38 for 169, 32 for 136, 37 for 129, 25 for 94, and they're all victories, right? The last 5, 14 for 21, 17 for 47, 23 for 86. That's the only victory in this bunch. 14 for 22 and 24 85, which that was the Mason Rudolph game with a bunch of guys sitting. They ran the ball a little more, including with Josh Dobbs, who we'll speak about in a little bit as well. I think some of it is the play calling, but I mean, for Ben, Fountain of Youth, some of the questions he was asked, what made you want to come back? We're still talking about his pay cut. Florio comes out and says something, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, and he says the team should have moved on. It was basically move on. They were picking in the 20s Brian, they could have made a move for Mac Jones. And I'm just like, what? You know what? Maybe they don't.
What? Let me just ask this. Is he dating Mac Jones? What the hell is the fascination with Mac Doughboy Jones? Get away from that nonsense. Look, I'm let him go be a Patriot and fail. I'm happy with that, right? At this point, just shut. All right, I'm off Mark Madden. I want to punch Mike Florio in the face now.
Oh, you may get it. You may actually get mentioned. Talk about him. I don't know. He might have not been good enough to be a mathlete either.
Probably not.
All the more power for him to get into the position to be able to talk, and I can only hope to be in that position. But then if I have to talk about 31 other NFL teams, I might be stretching it a little bit and talking out my posterior the same. Yeah. I don't either, but it's like, I'm just saying if I was wearing his hat, I wouldn't know maybe what I was talking about with the Steelers either if I didn't follow the Steelers. So if you have me talking about maybe, I don't know, the 49ers or something, like I'm going to be a little bit of a fish out of water. I'll be able to tell you Kyle Shanahan, I think, is a good coach, and they have George Kittle, and but I don't know. Is Trey Lance right? Is it the right decision there? You know what I mean? And that's where you have to go with the Steelers. Number one, if Ben doesn't take a pay cut and they get rid of him, they have even less money in cap to do other things. So do you play with a new quarterback, not named Ben, and less money, or you bring Ben back, the devil and you have more money to be able to put more pieces around him? I understand it wasn't like Scrooge McDuck swimming through his vault of gold coins, but next year it's going to be interesting when the Steelers have a lot of money. I know TJ Watt is going to be building one of those vaults and swimming around in it himself. But
yes, absolutely.
But Florio's saying this, and I mean, it's not to pick on Mac Jones. We've mentioned this a million times. How comfortable do you feel with all of the first-round quarterbacks that have been taken in almost the last decade? Very few do I think. You're just getting around the block here on Josh Allen. He's got to reproduce those numbers again this year. They put pieces around him like Stephon Diggs, but it wasn't he was getting sacked a lot. He was turning the ball over quite a bit the first 2 years. There's going to be growing pains with that. Guys can grow. Other people are just too impatient, or they're not putting the proper pieces around, like Sam Darnold, for example. I still don't know that Baker Mayfield, somebody's going to come on and say, well, he's thrown for this many yards and this many touchdowns. Well, he turns the ball over quite a bit too, and that's the reason why they installed the running game that they did with that two-headed Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb monster in the offensive line to protect them. Those are the things that Cincinnati needs to do. Lamar Jackson, he doesn't even attempt like half of the passes maybe, or two-thirds of what Ben and some of his peers are doing in the NFL. I'm not going to call him a running back, but everybody in Baltimore knows they need wide receivers, and everybody they tried to get to go there is like, I'm not signing this incentive contract. And their social media actually put out like a video of Lamar throwing the ball to Sammy Watkins, and some of the captions were like, it wasn't the smoothest looking pass. I would not have posted this video if I were them, because it was just kind of like, man, I left Kansas City for this and stuff like that. So, but I mean, just to kind of encompass all that, it's like, why does Ben get all of this hate? Here's another one. Pete Prisco, CBS Sports, top 100 NFL players. Did you see this?
No.
Had a bunch of quarterbacks listed on there. And I'm talking, okay, Justin Herbert on there, but his top 100 had 14 quarterbacks. There's 32 teams in the NFL, okay? Now, there's 18 other quarterbacks, and Ben was not in his 14 in the top 100, which I found preposterous. He had Kirk Cousins in there. And I'm just like, and if I could find the rest of Pete Prisco, his top 100, I may have actually saved this for this show. I thought I did. And I'm going to see if I can pull up the link. But I just think it's preposterous the amount of disrespect that Ben Roethlisberger ends up he gets. He's the Rodney Dangerfield of the NFL quarterbacks.
No respect at all. Yeah. Look, first, let me say something about what you said about the 49ers and you having to not. The difference is you'd actually do your homework, even though we're the least prepared people in podcast history. You'd actually you'd look at 49ers games, you'd study it a little bit before you started pontificating on it. Whereas I don't think Mike Florio is doing that. I think he's just off the cuff saying stuff that he thinks, and we talked about this nonsense with the clickbait stuff. That's all it is. Attention grab. I'm going to say something negative because it'll grab attention and I'll get the spotlight. Yeah, fight. Anyway, as to your the next comment with Prisco and this lack of respect, keep giving Ben no respect. Go ahead. The guy's got a chip on his shoulder, and he's going to get a bigger chip on his shoulder, and he's not going to come out and go, well, I'm mad at all you people. You don't give me any credit. But he's going to play mad. Play angry. I like angry Ben. You know?
Yeah, Angry Ben. Angry Ben is definitely. Let me see. I'm trying to find this. Is definitely. You don't want to give somebody chalkboard material, which is what we were talking about with the Browns last year. But of the quarterbacks that are on here, okay, Patrick Mahomes, number 1 overall. Aaron Rodgers, 3rd. Tom Brady, 4th. It's a top 100 number here, right? TJ Watt is actually 6th.
Stop. Go back to it. Aaron Rodgers is what?
He's 3rd.
Aaron Rodgers is 3rd.
Yeah.
Whiny Jeopardy host Aaron Rodgers
who may not even play. Yeah.
Right.
Mahomes, Aaron Donald, Aaron Rodgers, and then Tom Brady. I think that I'm going to be honest, and this is. Oh, I'm sorry. I just threw up in my mouth a little bit because of what I'm about to say. I swallowed it. It might come back up again. Tom Brady deserves to be higher than Aaron Rodgers on this.
Absolutely at this point.
He's the defending Super Bowl champ. You have the 2 Super Bowl
He's 450 years old, but he still deserves to be higher than Aaron overrated Rodgers.
That's okay. Pete Prisco thinks Travis Kelce is the 5th best player in the entire NFL.
All right, that invalidates his entire list. He's an idiot.
He has TJ Watt 6th. You know, I would be okay. Myles Garrett's 9 here, right? Yeah. I would have been okay because Myles Garrett's out there dunking basketballs, and I'm like, go ahead, break an ankle. That's just a great idea. But as far as your top 100 list goes, like TJ Watt's a top 10 guy, Myles Garrett's a top 10 guy, Travis Kelce is not 5. I don't know that he's sneaking in the top 10 at all. I mean, it's very much a league dominated by quarterbacks. Let me get through the rest of this list. Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, they're both in the top 10. Wilson is 8, Allen is 10. Let's see. Come on now. Deshaun Watson is listed here at 23. Lamar Jackson at 29. So he obviously likes mobile quarterbacks is where we're getting at. Justin Herbert now at 38. So he's like, if you're doing the position, he's in the top 10 of the quarterbacks. I know Dak Prescott's coming up here. Here he is, 50th. Let's see. I wouldn't put Dak on here either. I mean, that's just, I don't know how people are coming up with this stuff when the guy hasn't played. I'm getting down into the 80s now. Matt Ryan at 83. Matt Stafford at 88. Kirk Cousins at 93, Kyler Murray 94, Joe Burrow at 95, and then that is it. And then we have some just missed list of which.
Oh wait, did he put Baker Mayfield not on the list?
Baker Mayfield, hold on. Ryan Tannehill just missed, Derek Carr just missed, and Baker Mayfield just missed. So it's not bad enough that he has 14 quarterbacks in his top 100. He has an additional 3 and no mention of Big Ben Roethlisberger. That's 17. So
that is the epitome of all I remember is the last game.
Oh, it really is. And how much of that is really on Ben, too? We know there were problems with drops from the receivers. There was a bad snap from Marquise Pouncey. And the guy still threw for 500 yards in that game. We continue to bring that up. I get that there were some picks. There was a lot. I think there was some frustration. I think it's what happens. You get your back up against the wall. You're playing a team for the 3rd time in a season, back-to-back weeks, even though maybe not the same cast of characters necessarily. But there's a lot to say about some momentum that the Browns were carrying into that. There's no fans at Heinz Field. And the Steelers are playing, their 14th straight game in the season. When they started losing, it was because they had 5 days of rest against the Washington football team, and then they also had a short week against the Bills. So that set them up. But to be completely honest too, Brian, a lot of people look at that, and when we looked at the schedule, and we yuck and joke around, and we've already done this, we're like, 17-0. But when we looked at that schedule last year, we looked at it and said, okay, the Ravens will be a problem at this spot and this spot. The Titans are going to be difficult, competitive. But where did we have we had the Bills listed in Buffalo as being a challenging game, one that they could potentially lose. And we also had the Colts, which was the following week. No, we're not expecting to lose to the Cincinnati Bengals, but we still realize it's the divisional game. Did we expect it to be against Ryan Finley or whoever was playing quarterback, third string? Somebody mentioned it in the comments, and they're like, it's just a miserable game, and a Monday night game once again where the Steelers play that. Did they get – yeah, they actually got a full week finally, but they go from Buffalo on the road back to Cincinnati on the road, and I think they just tried to tweak too many damn things in that game. Let's just be honest.
Look, we've talked about this as well. By the time you get to that point, there was no mystery in what Randy Fichtner was going to try and do on offense. None. No. Zero.
But he tried it, and Ben nearly tripped being under center, handing off, too.
Yeah, there's none. No, everybody knew what was coming because it was, and that's not on Ben. That's the offensive coordinator at that point. Yes, Ben may have some control over trying to alternate plans and make different calls, but also there's times when he can't, change out of certain formations and what they have because of personnel that's on the field and whatever else they may be doing. By the time they get to that point in the season where things start to go south, it's because of the lack of creativity, which we have been bemoaning for games in advance of that it was going to come back and bite them in the butt. And sure enough, it did. People stopped rushing because they didn't need to. They knew the ball was coming out in 5 seconds, and all they did was jump up and whack at it, right? I mean,
that's true, too. Yes.
It's just crazy that you want to say, well, that means Ben's washed up. That doesn't mean Ben's washed up. Not even remotely close. And I will be, he said in one of those interviews, the first year back, you feel like everything's fine, but it's still the first year back after essentially a full reconstruction on his elbow. Second year back, now you've got a better sense of what you can and can't do. Did they blow a little smoke last year about, it's stronger than ever. I feel like I can throw the ball further. Yeah, they said some stuff like that. But you know what? You always do that. There still is a realism that you understand. He's going to take some time. And did they overprotect and did they change the way that the offense ran to try and compensate for not just Ben's elbow, but a lot of things? Sure, they did. And it didn't play out. And it wasn't, it wasn't the first season even that we were talking about Fichtner's lack of creativity on offense. So, yeah, it's great. They won, right? They won 11 games in a row. And we were the most miserable winning fan base in the world because we weren't happy with how we were winning.
Yeah.
And I get it because we weren't. We all could see there were going to be issues, but those issues were not Ben's play per se. Those issues had to do with the way they were playing, the way they were calling games, the way they were designing their offense.
There were a lot more problems with the game that people want to point out right there, and they win the following week against the Colts and then sit their starters. So you had that bad hump really that is Washington and Buffalo, and the byproduct that ends up being Cincinnati, a primetime game on the road. J.C. Hassenauer playing for Matt Filer. Derwin Gray plays in this game too, if you remember him. Everybody was blowing up smoke on him as well. Who else comes in? Oh, no James Conner, no shock there. Benny Snell, who did run for 84 yards here. That was the one game I was referencing. Actually, this is the game they did run for 84. It wasn't the win. Where was the Colts game then? Then the Colts game. Oh, no, the Colts game was the 14 for 22 because it became the shootout. So I retract that statement from earlier. But this is what I'm like. Ben was 20 of 38, 170 yards. And the Bengals had a lot of short fields. The defense had some issues too. You no longer had Bud Dupree. You obviously didn't have Devin Bush, and you didn't have Robert Spillane either. This was Avery Williamson that ended up coming in. And it was just as ugly as when they played the Jaguars way back when with Sean Spence. It was the same kind of fish out of water. We know where we're going to attack and where we can attack type deals. It's not like the Bengals had to do much, but were they happy with the win? It's the same thing that you were just talking about. Ryan Finley, 7 of 13, 89 yards and a touchdown. And so, what are you going to do about that? And he ripped off one big run. He was 10 carries for 47 yards, and Gio Bernard was the man in this, and this should have never happened with Joe Mixon out either, but it's just one of those things, man. You give people short fields, and they also got a lead. They also built a lead. They were up at one point 17-0 heading into the lockers at halftime. Then the Steelers finally got on the board with that one drive, and then all of a sudden it stalled again. You thought you were going to see them turn it around. Teams have bad games. They have bad days. Sometimes they get outplayed. Sometimes they don't do enough. I wouldn't say the Bengals had what do you want to say, outplayed? Well, in this case, I guess you could say they outplayed them, but a lot of it was the Steelers in their own self-defeating problems, which is the same thing I say about the first quarter against the Browns. It changes the game script entirely. You game plan this whole thing for a week, and it's just like, well, toss this away into the trash. Like, you're not going to be reading. If you're down 21-0, you're not going to be reading off that sheet play by play like you would an actual script for a movie or TV or anything like that. That stuff's all going out the window. And I think that was some of the improvisation that Ben or Fichtner or whatever were trying to do, and then that didn't end up working either. But I'm not necessarily just putting Ben again, I keep saying 6 feet into the ground, man. 33 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, only sacked 13 times. I think a lot of that gets fixed just by the nature of, are there 17 quarterbacks better than him like Pete Prisco? No, I think that's preposterous. He's absolutely in the top half of the league based on that. I don't think the offensive line, you think they actually get worse? As long as they stay healthy, I don't necessarily know that they're in a worse situation. You have Matt Canada. We're starting to see all the wrinkles. This is part of the annoyance thing that I see too with the OTAs. It's like the guys are in shorts. Here's a wrinkle of Matt Canada's offense. Ben's asked. He doesn't have a problem about going under center. But there's like this big myth about going under center too. Lamar Jackson operates pistol and shotgun, and they are a run-first team. I believe they're either the team that's out of shotgun most in the NFL, or they're second. I think it may have been the Cardinals, but the Cardinals are up there as well with Kyler Murray, mobile quarterback. It has nothing to do with being under center, whether Ben needs to be mobile and his knees are shot and his elbows shot and all these other things. Some people are like, his elbow's fine. I think he can still throw the ball, but his knees are bad. He can't escape from certain things. He's still a tough hombre to bring down, man. It's why they call him Big Ben. You just don't sneeze on him and he goes down. I don't know. It just drives me crazy that this has been the new narrative for the longest time. I guess they're always trying to put certain people into retirement early. They didn't really do that with Phillip Rivers last year that I recall. Phillip Rivers was coming to the Colts and was going to be a shot in the arm to them, even though they came out of the same draft. And people who want to trade for Aaron Rodgers got drafted a year later. Okay, I understand it's Aaron Rodgers. Big contract, big head, and big ego. I don't know. There's just dumb things like that where, no, I'm not giving up first-round picks for him or Julio Jones, for that matter, a 32-year-old wide receiver that's making like $16 million a year. No way. No way, Jose. And 3 years left on his contract, too. And it's like, I think Aaron Rodgers will play for a while, but is he an upgrade over Ben? I think a lot of people just, how can you disrespect Ben? Where's he at all-time passing right now? He's about to jump up into like 6th or 7th all time. I'm gonna pull this up too, Brian, because it's just, again, it's the lack. It's not getting any respect.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, there's probably something to do with some of Ben's history, that there's a consistent distaste in national media's mouths about. They may not want to give him the benefit of the doubt on these things. I think there is, regardless of whether people want to believe this or not, there is a national bias against the Steelers to a certain extent. People are much, much more likely to be negative towards the Steelers on a national media level than not. Is that because of consistent success? Is it because they expect them to actually be more successful than they are because they have been in the past? Is it because they just like doing that because the people who don't like the Steelers really don't like the Steelers? I don't know. I really honestly don't know. but there is a bias. It exists, and that's gonna transcend to Ben to a certain extent. While I don't think, as much as the refs stink and I hate them, I don't think the refs are calling games with that bias in their head. I don't think that the whole world is out to get the Steelers. There is definitely a bias that exists, and there's just no two ways about it.
Yeah, and I pulled up the career passing. Ben is 7th right now. Man, not just a hat rack, Brian. I got some good recall every now and then. He's 1,000 yards away from passing Dan Marino, 6th all time, and he's roughly 2,100 yards away from passing Phillip Rivers for 5th all time, and I think that's where it will stand by the time he hangs it up, which not necessarily this year. A lot of people, this is last ride for Ben. It could be. It doesn't mean it will be. We don't know that yet. And, and I'm going to get to the backup quarterbacks in a second because there's only one that's under contract for next year. And everybody's already sending him away, trade him for draft pick. No, stop with the nonsense. But Brett Favre has 7,138. Peyton Manning 71,940, Tom Brady 79,204, and he's going to close in on Drew Brees, who just retired. His number is 80,358. So Tom Brady will probably own the all-time, barring injury or any other setback this year. He's about 1,000 yards away, 1,100 yards away from the all-time. But you look at all the names that are in here, and you're just kind of like, Ben's above. Okay, Eli Manning, he has 2 rings. It's really there's some debate as to whether or not he's Hall of Fame caliber, but I just think there's a lot of other names around there that if you pulled him out of a vacuum, I think he is maybe.
If you take away the 2 championships, no.
Exactly.
But with 2 Super Bowl rings, they're there, right? They're there. They exist. One of them was, one was definitely against Brady. Were they both Brady?
Yes. I believe so.
Yeah, so he beats Tom Brady twice. He'll get in.
That's
whether he
legendary.
Gets in first, if he gets in first ballot or not, that's questionable. But he'll get in,
and that's fair.
And probably it's fair. Should Ben be a first ballot Hall of Famer? Sure, absolutely. There's not even just shut up and stop talking if you don't agree because you're wrong.
He cements it too. If he gets this, he wants a win so bad. He wants another one. And people will say, well, they've had all this other talent, this and that. It's like every other complaint that's out there. Yeah, he had Antonio Brown, Lev Bell, but then you complained and cried about Bruce Arians as OC. You cried about Todd Haley as an OC. You cried about Randy Fichtner. So at what point is it Ben or the offensive coordinators? At what point is it Mike Tomlin and not Ben or the coordinators and things like that?
It also comes back to this. I mean, there's just a level of realism. You can want to win. You can have the talent to win. You can have the team that can win a Super Bowl. It does not mean you will.
Correct.
Right? There are way too many things involved. There are 32 teams. And only one gets to win. Right? Only 2 get there, and that's it. Kansas City, in your mind's eye, should Tampa Bay, who barely got into the playoffs, right? But, should they have won the Super Bowl if all things are equal? Just say Tom Brady, okay, that means he's going to win. Well, only if you buy into the conspiracy theory that the NFL is making sure Tom Brady wins Super Bowls, which I don't buy into. But it does. No, I don't buy it.
Makes for a good story, man.
You wouldn't pick it. It's just the way. Sometimes the ball bounces a certain way, and it can't always bounce the way of the Steelers, right? So that especially in the Steelers Twitterverse, there's just this universal narrative: if you didn't win, you're done. Then you're terrible, and you need to be replaced. No, it doesn't work that way. Like you don't win every contract. You don't win every deal you make. You don't win every project you're on. You screw up sometimes, right? We all do. So are all of us getting fired every 3 weeks every time we make a mistake at work? No. So it's not going to be the same thing for the Steelers, right? You're going to have seasons where your expectations were higher than what actually happened. You're going to have seasons like the one where they ended up 8-8, where the actual success was higher than what expectations were going to be in week 2 when Ben Roethlisberger goes out for the rest of the season. At that point, you thought, we're going to have the number 1 pick because we stink.
Right? No, and that's an absolute great point. But a lot of people say, Hey, he's been around, and they haven't won anything lately, and this and that. Brett Favre, 1 ring. Peyton Manning, 2 rings, one each with a different team. Drew Brees, 1 ring. I mean, come on, guys.
Aaron overrated Rodgers.
1 ring.
1 ring.
What's John Elway got here? 2? John Elway's
2 or 3. I don't know.
John Elway's got 2. He's also, but Ben's above him. He had 51, 475. Aaron Rodgers is finally closing in at 11th. Warren Moon doesn't have the hardware. He would probably have all the passing records if he wasn't playing in Canada. And you got guys that are further down the list, like Jim Kelly's like 28th here. That, obviously if he wasn't a USFL player first and things of that nature, you could say the same thing about some others. But Joe Montana, Johnny United, I mean, just by statistics alone, it always blows my mind though that Kerry Collins is 20th. With 40-some thousand. I wouldn't necessarily say he's a Hall of Famer or Joe Flacco, 40, whatever. A lot of people just...
He's elite. Joe Flacco is elite.
Yeah. Where's the MVP awards for Ben and things like that? But I think you really also hit the nail on the head with the Steelers in general. I think what the media likes to do, the sports media, they like to prepare for, if you have success, they're preparing for your failure. And if you're a failure, they're preparing for your success. Right now, I can't hear enough about the Chicago Bears, it seems like. Every day is something with Justin Fields, and we're Ohio State guys. Yeah. And so we'll be bringing that up again just in 1 second. Let's just get it. I'm going to get it off my mind and out of my mouth right now. They keep talking, the local Pittsburgh sports beat reporters, anyone they can ask about Dwayne Haskins, they do. I get it. You're excited about the shiny new toy. They were excited about Zach Mettenberger and Paxton Lynch and all those names, and then Duck Hodges. And Duck Hodges really sabotaged. I'm the FCS football guy. I saw this guy play against my alma mater, before he ends up getting to the Steelers, and then he wins the contract, and he's a Cinderella story, but a lot of it propped up by defense, and it's no different throughout the whole of 2019, but I've been a Mason Rudolph supporter for a few reasons. And for anyone who wants to say, they could have moved up and got Mac Jones, like Florio likes to say, or somebody says they could have got this guy in the 3rd round or whatever. Well, this is the guy that they got that a lot of people are mocking, draft Twitter, whatever it might be. 1st round, they were linking him. They were linking Lamar Jackson some as well to Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Mason Rudolph ends up coming aboard, and it's like, not that guy. Not that. It's preposterous to me because
he wasn't a 1st round pick. That's why.
Well, just swap the names. Does it really matter? You swap names with another draft or somebody else.
Stunned. You're going to be stunned.
Okay.
I think Mason Rudolph's a better quarterback than Mac Jones.
That is not a hot take to me. Whatsoever, and he could end up being better than Josh Rosen.
You're gonna go now. You're gonna go
same
too far.
Draft.
You're gonna go too far if you start talking about how good he could be, because I don't buy that.
But he's
better than Mac Jones.
Well, why did the Steelers, Brian? Here's a question. This is like what is that? Schoolhouse Rock, and it's like, hey Bill, how do you become a law? Why did the Steelers sign Mason Rudolph extend him for an additional year? Oh, because number one, they don't want to have to deal with any of this next. What happens if Ben does get hurt? Mason goes out there, plays out of his mind, and now you have a decision with which one of these guys do you pay next year and keep?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's possible. It's also possible he goes out there, stinks up the joint. A lot of people have this very rosy memory or thoughts of Charlie Batch, and he was propped up by a good defense as well. 12 TDs, 12 interceptions, one really good game, I think, against Tampa Bay. But he's never been a guy that threw for more than really 200 yards in a game. Then he had a really bad game, maybe his final year against the Cleveland Browns, where there were 7 turnovers in that game, and it was just absolutely miserable. Weather was miserable. I was at that game, and it was just bad all the way around. So you have that, and people still somehow put that on a pedestal. Somebody else was talking, maybe even in this comment section, about Byron Leftwich. Yeah, I thought Byron was pretty good until he wasn't either. He had something with his ribs, and he couldn't get the ball downfield to Mike Wallace. I'll never forget that painful game against the Ravens. And you have some of these things that stick in your head. Mason, for me, has been the best of the lot that's come along in a long time, and I think he gets a lot of disrespect. I think people would be excited to see what he can do if he wasn't thrown into the circumstances to have seen what he did. And I still think he did okay until Earl Thomas knocked him out. He still won games. He still didn't make a whole lot of mistakes. He still managed the games. And it sounds a lot to me like Bill Cowher. He has his new book that's out now. He's been making media rounds. He was on, I think, Jim Rome or something yesterday. And he talks about, they talked about that draft process. And he also talked about how Ben was going to be the third quarterback. Then Charlie Batch got hurt, and it was about a 4-week healing process. And he said, well, we could have Ben as like a backup. We're going to limit what he does, maybe run the football a little more and things of that nature, not ask a whole lot of him and not make the moment too big for him. And Mason didn't really get much of an opportunity. I know Ben came in and then, they didn't win that first game that he played. I think that was the Titans as well. And then he came out, and then it was like, boom, they rip off this whole streak. But it's not like his numbers were popping off the page. And you had an amazing defense as well. And he was running around, gunslinging, backyard footballing it, as Cowher said in the same, it was like a 2-minute clip or whatever that I saw of it. And I get a lot of the same thing like Mason Rudolph. We were talking about Aaron Rodgers didn't come flying right out the gate, as a superstar either, and he sat behind Favre, and even when he played his first year, he was okay. And then eventually, it's like a tiered thing. You got to give these guys some time to kind of season. And I think that was part of the maturation process with Rudolph. I think the Steelers give him an extension and added a year on the contract, so they at least have somebody under contract, and it's not the unknown. This is a guy that maybe we can roll with that may at the very least be let's put it this way. Do you think he's at least, if he goes into starter mode here, I wonder where Pete Prisco puts him among all the quarterbacks that are there.
352nd.
I mean, really, I love Matt Stafford. I would have loved the thought of him in a Steelers uniform, to be completely
That would have been
honest.
great.
I think he's been underrated, but at least he didn't put Jared Goff up there. But to say Tannehill just missed the list or something like that, that's what you're probably looking at. Is a very
he's
similar
a moron.
I'm telling you, a lot of people are just they're off this ship. Trade Rudolph, but you don't know what you're going to get in return. You could get Rosen. We don't know what Mac Jones will be like. We don't know what any of these Zach Wilson. We really don't know what any of these guys are going to be like. You wanted Sam Darnold, and he could end up being even worse. You could find out that he really isn't. He turns into the pumpkin at midnight. You know what I mean? And it's Duck Hodges. You saw what happened with there. And I think a lot of it comes from Duck Hodges' lack of success. Some of his failures and setbacks get projected onto Mason Rudolph. And you know why? Because Mason had one game, primetime TV, against a rival where he gets a helmet thrown at him. You had guys bleeding out their ear leaving the field. You had Juju leaving the field, Deontay leaving the field, Connor leaving the field. I mentioned this so many darn times. Short week, playing at Cleveland, set up for failure. We said that years ago when we were going through that schedule, even if we were under the impression we would have Ben for that game. And Ben is been Cleveland's daddy for the most part, and he doesn't traditionally lose at First Energy or against most of the division opponents, and particularly the Browns and Bengals. But it's like we knew that game was going to be a problem, but that's the one that everybody watched, and he throws 4 picks, and all of a sudden it's like, this is the worst thing ever. Ignore what happened in Week 17 of last year where he actually looked pretty sharp, precise. If he would have won that game, maybe a whole different narrative. Instead, and I know you've got some things to jump on with Rudolph, but we're both Buckeyes fans. We don't really have anything bad to say about Dwayne Haskins, do we? But we know the struggles he's already had and the off-field things. With Mason Rudolph, the Steelers, they don't have those question marks about him. That's why he's got the contract. That's why he's the backup. And I think it would take a lot to jettison him from that position behind Ben this season instead of asking everybody and their mother, well, what have you thought about Dwayne Haskins right now?
Well, and yeah, you're right. It's the shiny new toy, or as we said before, the shiny, somewhat rusted new toy. Because Dwayne Haskins has his pockmarks, so to speak, from being around. But look, let me talk about Mason. Everybody who listens to us knows my thoughts on Mason Rudolph, which is that he is, I think, a capable backup quarterback. I do not believe he has what it takes to be the guy who leads us. But I would be thrilled to be wrong. I just don't think I am, because I'm never wrong. But that's beside the point. But it's only reasonable, right? Here's a guy who knows the offense, who's been in the offense, who's been around, and you have to have somebody on the roster next year. It's not like you can go in with nobody under contract. And even if nothing else, you're taking what, a $10 million flag to say, let's find out if he can be the guy. When Ben is done, when Ben is truly done, if this is his last rodeo, if he rides off into the sunset after this season, win or lose, no matter what happens, they got to be able to have the chance to find out whether Mason could have been the guy or could be the guy. It was the issue that we stated when they picked him. It's the reason I thought that pick was going to be a wasted pick, because they were never going to know. Now, they had the opportunity to get at least a look at it. And you're absolutely right. He played well enough until Earl Thomas conked him out, right? He wasn't the worst. He wasn't the best, but he wasn't the worst. But you can accept that, especially in a guy who never had starting experience before, who was coming into the season expecting to be the backup and have a chance to learn. Now, all of a sudden, he's thrust in the starter role. You can live with that, right? So maybe they think there's something that we might be able to build on there. And even if there's not, we got to find out. We're going to pay $10 million for a backup quarterback one way or the other, right?
Oh, or more.
Or more. We may as well keep a guy who at least knows our system. Now, so, yeah, I agree. I don't think it's conceivable that Dwayne Haskins supplants Mason Rudolph as the number 2 quarterback. But I'll tell you what I do think. I do think it's conceivable that Dwayne Haskins makes this roster. Remember, Haskins played one season as the starting quarterback at Ohio State, right? And he's a different quarterback than what, everybody talks about this with Justin Fields. Ohio State quarterbacks never make it in the NFL because they're designed for college football and they're not NFL quarterbacks. And to be fair, you can't name 5 NFL starters who had, any length of a career that were Ohio State quarterbacks. You probably can't, because they just aren't there. A friend of mine, a high school buddy, Don Roberts, he goes on and on about Ohio State quarterbacks can't do it in the NFL. Dwayne Haskins is not the typical Ohio State quarterback, right? He's more of a pocket passer kind of quarterback. He's a throwback kind of quarterback. He's got some mobility, but remember, unlike guys who come out of college and have 3 starting years of experience, Dwayne Haskins had 1. There was no way you really expected him to just come in and excel at the next level. He was going to take maturity time. He was a kid, right? And he made kid-like mistakes. If I had a bunch of money and I was 20-something years old, I might go to strip clubs too. Well, whatever.
Yeah, but during the whole COVID thing, that was really, really frowned upon.
I still might have
done. How's a strip club even open?
I don't know. That's whatever.
Without a mask too,
Yeah, without a mask.
So it was like layers upon layers of.
It's not responsible, but it's what you can see a immature young man doing, right? And you can accept that. I think Dwayne Haskins can make this team. And if he makes this team, then next year, I can see there being a competition, a realistic competition for who takes over the team. That's what I can think.
That's completely fair. But asking Ben Roethlisberger, let me see, what are your thoughts on Dwayne Haskins so far? And he says, I was just telling Coach Mike Sullivan the other day that his release and throwing motion mechanics are some of the prettiest I have ever seen. I told him I wish I had that. I joked that he could throw it through a car wash and it wouldn't get wet. He's learning it. It's obviously a new system for him. He's young in the league. It's fun to have that young energy around. Like I said, when he throws the football, it's pretty. And everyone and their mother took these quotes, and some people got 3 articles on their clickbait website out of it, and I'm just I'm rolling my eyes here, especially by the way they spun it, and it's just okay, what's Ben supposed to say? He throws floaters and rainbows and can't get it past 10 yards of the line of scrimmage or something. He doesn't see or read defenses properly in shorts. Come on, okay? I know that's kind of exciting, but at least some of the pressure, I think, is off of Rudolph. Nobody's asking him this because, remember, a couple of years ago, Rudolph gets drafted. They still had Landry Jones as a backup. Josh Dobbs had to win that job, and he did so in the preseason. He led 6 scoring drives, I think 4 for touchdowns, and that's what everybody remembers about Josh Dobbs now. When Josh Dobbs has come in on limited time, you had him complete a pass against the Ravens or maybe the Raiders, and he threw a pick. Maybe he should have had another. He looked like a deer in headlights in that game, and then you really didn't see him a whole lot other. They had a blowout, I think, against Carolina. That was a primetime game, and he got in for a little bit there, but he was mostly handing the ball off. So you haven't seen a whole lot. And they bring him back, and there's some people who still think he should be the backup. And I'm just kind of like, come on, man. But people are really blowing up the Haskins thing. Look, he's on like this. This might be his last rodeo with the NFL already. I get he was a 7th overall pick, but the patience for investing time and money into these players is nil. And he's got to prove that he wants to be there, and he's going to be a team player, and he's not going to violate team rules, put his team at jeopardy. And also, aside from all of that, that has nothing to do with what he actually has to perform on the football field. He has to be able to complete passing and stuff. Josh Dobbs did not look like the same player heading into the next year when he had to compete with Mason Rudolph for the backup spot. They actually put them kind of on the They alternated them in camp. They had them mixing and matching because, believe it or not, Ben does get rest days. He doesn't play every single day in camp, and they need to give these snaps to these guys to see what they're capable of. And Dobbs clearly lost that battle, drops to number 3, and then loses it even further because some guy, unknown guy from Samford, not Stanford, Samford, an FCS school with a cool nickname and a duck calling championship, makes Josh Dobbs expendable to trade away to the Jaguars, who needed quarterbacks, lost Nick Foles. They have all these 6th-round quarterbacks. They had Gardner Minshew and then Jake Luton, and he can't beat those guys out to maintain some sort of job. I understand changes in staff and things of that nature, but dumpster fire that the Jaguars are, he couldn't earn any type of time there amongst maybe subpar competition on the depth chart versus knowing you got a franchise future Hall of Fame quarterback as your QB1 in Pittsburgh. So I just think that, the whole Josh Dobbs thing gets a little overblown. The Mason Rudolph thing gets overblown. Oh, he's a bum. Oh, he's this. I think they're projecting my dude Landry Jones onto him. And I take Mason Rudolph a million times over Landry. As much as I thought Landry caught some flack, he was capable. He didn't necessarily always shoot the team in the foot. Yeah, that playoff game in Cincinnati, he could have. You also had Ben get MMA knee striked by Vontaze Burfict on the ground, which wasn't cool. I propose this for all the people who wanted to move on from Ben Roethlisberger. You move on from Ben Roethlisberger, and then what do? Are you rolling with Rudolph and Haskins only? No, you're probably drafting a guy. That means you don't have Najee Harris this year.
Yeah.
You probably have to move up, as Florio says, to get Mac Jones. At what cost? You're probably giving up maybe Pat Freiermuth, Kendrick Green. You're giving up something else there that would help and put the pieces around whoever the next guy's
maybe
going to be.
both.
Yeah.
Because it's not – and you're giving up probably – to move up in that where they were to where they would have had to be, right? You're probably giving up next year's one, something this year, and this year's one.
The Steelers, to move up for Devin Bush, paid less than what the Bears did to move up fewer spots at number 9 or whatever to get Justin Fields this year.
Yeah.
Just think about that. That's insane when you think about that. The Steelers go up from like 20 to 10 for Bush and don't pay as steep of a price as the Bears did to jump like 3 spots, 4 spots, whatever it was. But I'd rather the thought of, let's say Ben isn't here next year. You now have all these other pieces in place. We will know whether or not Haskins is a guy that's going to vie for that role. And you'll more than likely have Rudolph. He's already under contract here. Correct me if I'm wrong. Haskins is like an exclusive rights free agent. He did like almost like a futures contract.
I think that's right. Yeah.
So they have him locked up for a few years and control his rights if they care to do so. They could go in and not draft anybody next year if they feel the price is too high. Let's say they have an excellent season this year. They're in the postseason again. Let's put at least that as an expectation. Then they're drafting in the 20s again. They're still going to be out of reach there for maybe some of the top quarterbacks of the class that are going to come out. So if you do end up rolling with the other 2 guys next year and then you have a dog crap season and you're in the basement, you're closer to striking range of maybe then drafting a guy, because now you know the ones that you have are no good, and now you're going to go in another direction and bring in what you hope to be the future, which still isn't a lock by any means when you look at Carson Wentz and Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota and all these other guys that have come and gone over the last, 8 to 10 years of first-round draft picks. I would much, much rather have the situation that the Steelers have laid out right now than everything else that's been proposed.
Absolutely. I don't disagree with that at all. I think it is. I mean, that's the way you hope this plays out, right? Certainly, you hope we're drafting 32nd. That's what you hope. You hope we're drafting 32nd next year. But again, that's as we said, that's not. Is it a realistic expectation? No, probably it isn't. But it never is, to be quite frank. It's what you hope for, but the chances are always, no matter how good your team is, slim because everything has to play your way. But if we're drafting in the low 20s or in the 30s, yeah, you're probably not going to draft your next quarterback there. More than likely, you're not. But you never know. Anything could happen. Somebody slides. But at least now you go into the next season, and now you've got a group of guys, and that's when you kind of hope that you stink. If you either hope you're good and one of these guys takes it over, or that you stink so bad that you have the chance to get the right guy. What happens a lot of times, and this is what happened with Bill Cowher for many of those seasons in the 80s. They were good enough to always be drafting in the middle of the draft. Never quite bad enough to be in the top, or never quite good enough where they're all at the bottom, but always in that no man's land of the middle, where if you're trying to find a quarterback, you're too far behind, right? You're not in the striking distance. So you hope that they're not those guys, right? Either they're good or they absolutely stink. That's what you want.
and quarterbacks too. And that's the last time the Steelers had a losing season. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Is the year before Ben Roethlisberger comes in. Ben gets drafted in 2004. They go 6-10 with the Tommy gun instead.
Tommy gun.
Tommy Maddox ends up playing. Now, Charlie Batch did appear in 4 games, but he only attempted 8 passes. This was almost exclusively a 16-game season with the Tommy gun, who attempted 519 passes, completed 57.4% of them. I loved him, but 34, 14 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 17 interceptions. That's a guy there in his early 30s after making a comeback to the NFL where we most certainly need to do something different. Those aren't even close to what Ben's numbers were last year, are comparable. The last thing, we got to put a bow on this, Brian. We've been long-winded, but you talk about backup situations around the league. I'm just going to start rifling through, starting from the AFC East all the way down. Buffalo Bills. I'm not even going to name the teams. This means just start with players. Mitch Trubisky, simple yes or no. Mitch Trubisky.
No.
Yeah. Jacoby Brissett. Mac Jones, or you got Cam Newton, Jarrett Stidham here, and Brian Hoyer as the Patriots depth chart. I mean,
I might take Cam.
They're throwing darts. They're throwing darts right now.
Yeah.
Cam Newton could be Mike Vick, and Mike Vick was very painful with the Steelers.
Yes, it was.
As much as you wanted to see him better. End of his career, 36 years old or whatever, too. Short, no preparation with training camp, basically.
I should define this. What
pretty rough.
When you're telling me these names, what are you asking me? Do I want them or not?
Well, what do you think of them? Would it be a better situation to have one of these guys, and/or compare it to Mason Rudolph and/or Dwayne?
All right, that's what I thought you were doing.
I'm not even throwing Dwayne yet. Dwayne for me is QB3, and I think it's his job to lose. Josh Dobbs is the
I agree
guy
with that. I think that's correct.
Outside looking in, Josh Dobbs, great guy, smart guy to have there on the clipboard on the sidelines. He could still be involved if they keep the expanded practice squads, of course.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Jets are doing behind Zach Wilson. They've got James Morgan and Mike White, so Trace McSorley with the Ravens. He's done better than I've expected, but you're asking for the same situation as maybe a Mason Rudolph. Same with Brandon Allen, Case Keenum.
No.
I'm not feeling too confident. Hard
no.
Tyrod Taylor, Jeff Driscoll, and Davis Mills.
Hard no.
If Watson doesn't play. Jacob Eason. A lot of people wanted to see the Steelers do this. Sam Ellinger with the Colts behind Carson Wentz.
Another hard no.
Fair. Okay, assuming Trevor Lawrence starts, you got Gardner Minshew, C.J. Beathard, and Jake Luton. Minshew's overperformed for being a 6th-round pick, but none of those are extreme confidence builders for me either. Minshew with a different team, maybe. I'd have to see it, but you could just still get more of the same anyways. Logan Woodside, DeShone Kizer behind Ryan Tannehill. Not feeling that. Teddy Bridgewater may start in Denver, so you're left with Drew Lock maybe becoming the next guy, another former high pick there. With the Denver Broncos. Chad Henne, behind Patrick Mahomes. Marcus Mariota, this is the one everyone wants to bring up behind Derek Carr based on just a little bit. Everybody sees the primetime games, man. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Chase Daniel behind Justin Herbert.
No.
And Easton Stick was another one of the North Dakota guys that made it into the NFL here. Probably won't ever see a snap, though, I would guess. The Cowboys are interesting to me. Cooper Rush and Garrett Gilbert and Ben DiNucci, those were their guys last year. We saw how that worked when Andy Dalton also went down behind Dak Prescott. Mike Glennon behind Daniel Jones. Joe Flacco behind Jalen Hurts. I mean, I could see you want experienced quarterbacks, but also consider the experience that they've had. If it's not good experience, I mean, Taylor Heineke, Kyle Allen behind Ryan Fitzpatrick, Washington football team. Yikes. That's a yikes for me, dog. The Bears have Andy Dalton, Nick Foles, and Justin Fields. I don't know, man. Nick Foles, he seems to be, if he's a backup, he seems to do much better than when he's a starter. So that might be the only one where you might twist my arm and they're like, okay. But then he has to become the starter and he turns into the pumpkin too. Jared Goff, Tim Boyle, David Blow. Wow, that's rough. Jordan Love could end up being the starter. They have Blake Bortles there also in Green Bay. Blake Bortles has been bouncing around and has not been the second coming of Ben Roethlisberger as predicted when he was drafted. Kellen Mond is behind Kirk Cousins right now. Again, a third-round pick. You really don't know how that's going to pan out. It's probably going to sound a lot like the hype for the next guy that sits behind Matt Ryan, and that's A.J. McCarron. Remember when he was going to be the next big thing too?
Yep.
P.J. Walker's sitting there behind with Will Grier behind Sam Darnold in Carolina. P.J. Walker was an XFLer. I don't know, man. When you don't see these guys, it's kind of hard to say. But again, you're not seeing them. You don't know. You can't necessarily say, oh, better than Mason Rudolph. Jameis Winston and or Taysom Hill and Book. Boy, that's going to be fun to watch, too. Let's see what Sean Payton and the Saints end up doing. Blaine Gabbert is behind Tom Brady. And then Kyle Trask, who they ended up taking, who they had the luxury of taking because they just won the Super Bowl and brought all of their players back. So they didn't have a whole lot of needs. They had the luxury to be able to throw a dart at this guy in the second round. A much different situation than the Steelers, who had some holes to repair at running back, offensive line, etc. Colt McCoy, who's still hanging around. He is now in Arizona backing up Kyler Murray. John Wofford, Bryce Perkins, and Devlin Duck Hodges are in L.A. with the Rams behind Matt Stafford. Trey Lance was just drafted, will battle with Jimmy Garoppolo, so that's a little bit different of a situation there. And then finally, Geno Smith is still hanging around as well with the Seattle Seahawks.
Wow.
A whole lot of those. and with the exception of where teams have drafted a player, you're not looking at the future. You're not even certain you have your starter in a whole lot of these different situations. It's just the overall picture of where do you place, a situation with Ben Roethlisberger and Mason Rudolph. I'd say the Steelers are quite all right now. Let's see them play all the games. It's a big, scary AFC North. We'll have more to talk about those teams coming up, and everybody thinks, look at all these other Heisman Trophy winners and everything like that. It's quite all right. I think Ben's still the man. I don't think there's any reason to put him out the pasture like everyone else does and sell the Steelers short on a season that hasn't even been played yet.
Yeah, I look, there maybe were three guys that you mentioned that I might have maybe taken. Maybe three. And I sort of stopped paying attention because it was too boring and they weren't guys I was interested in. Not that you were boring, but those names were boring names.
Oh, I know. And I hate going through them because it probably put everyone to sleep. So for the 2% of you that are still there, I like when people are like, hey, I'm
2%ers. We love you, 2%ers.
So, well, Brian, hey, thanks for not falling asleep on this. Thanks for joining me once again. We got two in this week, which is, and a longer one here, I think, as well. So it's always fun. We'll have some more things. Maybe
I'll see you this weekend.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're coming out my way. That's always.
I am.
That could be fun. Double trouble if we have like some live feed. We should just go down. Never mind. I'm not going to put that out there. That could be a very bad idea. Based on the dumb cousin who went over to Paul Brown Stadium in Cincinnati and was out there and he was saying F the Bengals and stuff. And it was like around the same time of the year right now where there's maybe a janitor in the building like, what is this guy doing? He'd call him a jagoff if he was in Pittsburgh, throwing middle fingers at a empty, inanimate, concrete block of a stadium. So
who cares about the stadium? It's not the stadium I don't like. It's the team that plays it.
I know. Go find like somebody else, like, I don't know, Joe Burrow, and then do that. Put him in a headlock.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that'll do it for us here. Don't forget about the Chase Claypool camp, of course. Happy trails there to Tunch Ilkin as well. Got to wrap up the show with that. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Curious to hear your thoughts, as always, unless you're that guy from the Browns. Are you a 2%er? That'll be interesting to see. He's
would be. That'd be
a lot. That would be something. Yeah. Hey, if you're hearing that, you know who you are. That'd be fun to see that comment. We're all smiling here. It's all laughs, and then until we play, and then somebody's gonna cry and be upset. So, my name's Joe. His name's Brian. Until next time, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.